Hello and welcome to another Rocket Jump Events online video. Today I'm joined by Moo Yu, a developer at Foam Sword Games, the creators of Knights and Bikes. He's also worked on Little Big Planet, Ratchet and Clank, Moshi Monsters and more. Hi Moo, thanks for joining me.
Hey, nice to be here.
Now usually Rocket Jump is a chance for people to get together and learn from each other's experiences in person, but this year we obviously can't do that safely due to pandemic related lockdowns. So instead we're doing these online videos, and I want to thank Moo for his time today. Moo, how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Yeah, just another day in the endless cycle.
2020 never ends.
Yep.
I mean, it will end at some point. I've got it on good authority.
Hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good place to start. I mean, it's obviously been a strange year and a very difficult year for many. What are some of your kind of takeaways from the year we've had so far?
Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting one. I guess for me, it was going to be an odd one anyway, because I worked on Knights and Bikes for so long that it was going to be like a recovery year. So sort of, making sure that, with the release of the game, it takes some time for, the money to start coming in. So making sure that I was financially good. My son was born last year, so making sure I was financially good was a bit more complicated. And then just also, the whole like work from home setup is something that I'm very used to personally. So at the end of last year, I got an office job, and then as soon as we got back to home, like working from home, it felt really natural for me again. So I'm one of the few people that enjoyed that aspect of lockdown and quarantine, is just like working from home, not having a commute, being able to see my son like for 3 or 4 extra hours per day compared to what I would have. But then from like a global perspective, I think it's been just hard. I think just disaster after disaster after disaster. I think for me, my takeaway has just been a new sense of urgency. I think there's a lot of things that you realize, oh, these are issues we're going to have to get to eventually. But now a lot of them feel a lot more pressing, and it feels like now is the time to start acting on things rather than, kicking it down the line a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Have you had a chance to play any games this year? Been playing much, or has it been all work focused?
It is really hard to find time to play games just because, yeah, with the little one around, he's demanding a lot of time. So I do focus primarily on short games. So I've been playing stuff like Twine games are really great for me in that I can just get in. I don't need to like wake him up if he's napping, deal with things like that. I've been looking a lot at, my background and my heritage and like telling the stories that I know. So I've been really inspired by games like Half or Lion Killer, which were both by Asian creators. I really, really want to play Luna, which is second on my list right after Jenny LeClue, which is the game that I'm playing now.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. And you mentioned Knights and Bikes, so that's been out for over a year now, just about. You funded that through Kickstarter originally, and then kind of found a publishing partner in Double Fine. What was that kind of journey like? Are there any kind of insights or stories from that time you would like to share?
I mean, it was definitely a long journey. It's one of those things of, I think when you're trying to do an indie project, a lot of it is finding the right time to give it that boost. So it was a kind of thing that was kicking around for a long time until Rex and I really lined up on our timings, and then we did the Kickstarter campaign. So that was really interesting, and it was like really great for both of us to get our hands dirty again. I think both of us sort of moved into managerial, like tell other people what to do positions. And getting our hands dirty again was really, really nice, and having that kind of like really fast iterative approach where there's so few people that you just keep chucking stuff in the game, and you pile it up with a bunch of content, and then you edit to make it seem coherent, and then you do that again and again and again. I think that part of it was really, really great. I think the other thing for me was like the two projects I worked on at that time were Subsurface Circular and Knights and Bikes, and it was just so cool to work with two very like authorial voices, with Mike Bithell and Rex, and just Rex telling the whole story of his childhood growing up in Cornwall and all that kind of stuff. It really made me think about like, well, what is the story that I have to tell? And it made me start thinking about, okay, I need to start planning about what is the infrastructure that I need to set up, or what are the skills that I need to develop to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm actually from Cornwall myself, so
Nice.
I empathise with that. And you mentioned a bit about this in terms of thinking about the year. Obviously, there's been a real focus on diversity and issues around diversity, and as well as your development work, you're also a member of the People of Colour in Play team. So that kind of really important work focuses on improving diversity in the games industry. where do you think we've managed to get to so far, and what kind of steps do you think organizations still need to be looking at, as we move into 2020? Because it's on the radar, people are thinking about it. What should they actually be doing?
Yeah, I think in the doing side, I think that probably is the emphasis. I think when the Black Lives movement or Black Lives Matter movement got a lot of attention, there was a lot of you know statements and support and that kind of thing, which isn't nothing. But I think it was really interesting in that time when people would just put their money where their mouth is. I think it was Humble put together a huge amount of money to like fund Black creators and that kind of thing. So I think it really is taking action. I think there's a lot of umming and awing about like what should we do, who can we talk to, that kind of thing. And I feel like there's so many companies with so much resource that don't know what to do with it. And I'd say like if you don't know what to do with it, you should figure it out. Like you should educate yourself and learn. But even while you're in that process, there are organizations like Plug and Play that you can partner up with, whether it's providing funding to us or providing us support in other ways. And we have a community of people that we can immediately help and start addressing some of the issues that we can see on an everyday basis that are invisible to a lot of other people. And I'd say the other big thing is that there's a lot of studios that sort of approach us that I feel like they're looking for an excuse to continue doing the same things. They're sort of saying like, can you tell us or can you do this work for us so that we don't have to change anything? And I think that's just not how it works. I think there's a lot of studios that like to say, oh, our processes are colorblind and this and that. And it's like, I think it is acknowledging that there are differences. And I think even the term people of color, like, there's no experience of people of color. It's not like a unified, homogenous group. There's different groups and there's different people and different experiences. And it really is about, as a company, are you ready to, bring on people that don't fit your homogenous culture? And are you willing to listen to them, embrace them for what they are, or are you just going to try and cram them into the slot that you already have from whatever systems you've built up in the time that you've existed?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And if people are interested, it's worth Googling Pock and Play and checking out the website because it's definitely worth engaging with. And if you're looking for advice and resources, they can provide them, which is really valuable. I want to talk to you about Foam Sword because it's basically, you have collaborators, but it's a two-man studio, really, you and Rex. And there'll be people out there watching this who have the ambition to start an indie studio and to work in that kind of indie way. And obviously, you've got the experience of running an indie studio. What's your advice to people who want to get started with indie dev and have your job, basically?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what stage you are in life. Like for someone who's older like me that has, a child and has to worry about that kind of stuff, I think it really is good to assess how much risk can you take on, really laser focus on what you're trying to achieve and how much time that's going to take and how much it's going to cost you. But I think when I say like laser focus on what you're trying to achieve, I think there's a lot of people that think like, oh, I want to make a game that like has this kind of story and makes this much money and this and this and this. And I literally think you have to think there's only one thing I can achieve, and whether that's financial or creative or whatever, you can really only focus on one thing at a time when you're such a small team. And so I would say for anyone thinking about doing an indie game is just like find the one aspect of your game that matters the most to you and be ready to cast aside absolutely everything else that you're considering working on for that. So I'm not saying obviously you do the worst in everything else. It's just that you have to be able to make a decision of what is the thing that matters more than anything, that if it came up against another aspect of your game or time or money, you would prioritize that thing first. Because I think if you haven't made that decision, it's really easy to just like bring a ton of things up to like 8 out of 10 quality and have never actually done anything to that 10 out of 10. And without that, your game is just a really bad version of a AAA game most of the time. So I'd say that's the thing. Just like be ready to analyze yourself and what your values are and what you're trying to achieve, and be ready to actually be tested on that.
Yeah, that's really good advice. It's never been easier to start in indie dev, but it's also there's more competition now than ever. So I think you're absolutely right. That you need to really hone in on the things that make you special. or that
and
make your game special.
Especially if you want to be a commercial indie dev, because I think there's actually quite a few indie developers that are like, well, I just want to make this cool thing. I have a day job and this is on the side, and I think that's totally fine and that's amazing. I think some of the coolest projects come out of that. But if you want to be a commercial indie dev, not only do you have to be confident and happy with the thing that you're creating, but you have to be able to convey that idea to others. So you really do need to focus, because the more complicated your idea, the harder it is to transmit to other people's brains. So it's just going to be an uphill battle the more complicated thing you're taking on.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you recently became a father. Congratulations on that. The game industry in general, I think, has kind of this reputation of being a bit skewed towards younger people, particularly in the kind of indie space. You've had lots of experience. You're a little older, and you're successful. And I think a lot of people would agree with me that one of the best things about indie games is that they kind of cater to a wider variety of perspectives and experiences.
Yeah.
Do you think the industry needs more variety in age? Like, what advice do you have for people who are older than average, maybe, but still want to work in games?
Yeah, I think diversity in all ways is better for games. I think we have to remember as creators that the games we make help define the audience that plays the games, and that then further defines the kinds of games that we can make and the kinds of games that are going to make money. And so I think telling new stories is really, really important. I think it's not surprising that, for example, a game like The Last of Us is made. It's a story about a father and his protective father instincts. I think that's a game that probably wouldn't have existed 10 years ago, because most of the game developers weren't fathers. It just wasn't that kind of thing. And I think as an industry, we are pretty. I think it's gotten better, but I think it is a really difficult place for people that have family responsibilities, just from the time investment side of things. And I think that's something we can definitely improve. But I also think that, along with the age side, for example, I don't think there's enough games. I think there's actually a ton of games about being a father now. I think that has kind of happened. But, there's not a lot of games about being a mother, but there's also countless other viewpoints, whether it's from disability perspectives, cultural background, gender, sexual orientation, religion. There's all these aspects of games that just haven't really been tapped to a significant degree, and I think age is part of it. Like, I think age is one of the harder ones, not harder ones to deal with, but I think it has the extra added part that when you reach a certain age, your responsibilities become higher, but also your priorities of your career can drop down lower. So, trying to keep that balance and trying to make the games industry a place where you don't need to be sacrificing to be part of it. I don't think there definitely are other industries where that is the case, but I think most jobs, people aren't saying like, I'm doing this at the expense of my soul, my mental and physical health, and that kind of thing. So I think as an industry, we do need to be aware of these kinds of things, and we do need to make it a healthier work environment so that we can encourage the kind of diversity we need for the content we want to produce.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Like, just to kind of, and obviously things are changing a little bit now in terms of public perception, but there's been maybe an acceptance of things like crunch and burnout as just a natural part of the dev cycle for a really long time. It's definitely on the AAA side.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been my experience, that it's gotten better over time, but I think there's just this instinct. And I think that, we want to make the best products that we can, and we're faced with like the commercial realities of the market. And I think you always get into your mind like, oh, if I could just put a little bit more time into it, I can still hit this release date, I can still do this. But I think what I've learned in the long run is that, sometimes that works out in the short term, but most of the time I don't even think it works out in the short term. But it definitely doesn't work out in the long run.
Yeah. If people are interested in finding out more about you, where can they find you online? Where can they get more from the world of Moo if they want to follow you on social networks and stuff like that?
Yep. I think I pretty much only use Twitter as a social network, and on Twitter I am one of Moo, ONEOFMOO.
Cool. We'll put that in the video as well so people can find you and come follow you and get more great insights. Thank you so much for joining me and for sparing your time today. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks. And to those of you at home, thanks for tuning in and watching. This has been a Rocket Jump Events video presented by Etch Play. Archives of all of our videos, plus lots of other very good ones, are available on the HPlay YouTube channel, which you're on right now probably. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on a future video. Cheers.
David.